Unemployed and Afraid acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on and of the land where you, the listener, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to any First Nations, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, acknowledging that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building brands, businesses, and a career you love with the people who've done it. I'm your host, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into today's story of starting over. It's so good to have your ears, business builder, for another epic chat and personal story of what it's really like creating businesses that thrive. We get to hear today from the incredible Briony Kennedy, who has built a beauty empire, and she shares in such a generous way about her learnings. This chat hit so many good nerves for me, from the importance of reframing why you sell something to a consumer so that you can get out of your own way and get it done, to fighting the feeling that you already have to be a serious and well-known expert in something in order to create a business around it. I mean, how many times does that one stop an amazing business from ever being created? We talk about the battle with self-doubt that we have when getting started with something new, and how easy it is for well-meaning family and friends to reinforce that feeling. The realness about what you might need to forgo when you're going after something you really want. Like, I'm talking very real about that. What are you willing to give up to go get this thing that you know you deserve? And also getting very clear on what your metric of success is so that you can give yourself a bit of a break on the journey. And we talk about exactly what it's like becoming the face of your brand when it was never part of the plan, and why, if you haven't already done so, perhaps you should consider it. I could have quite literally picked this incredible human's brain all day long. So strap in for a big chat. And as always, thank you for listening and taking the time to invest in yourself and the creation of your own business. I hope you love this chat with Briony. I'm here with Briony Kennedy, founder, CEO, and face of Australian-made zero-waste luxury cosmetics brand Adorn. Adorn has existed since 2008 to make a better connection between natural beauty products and the beauty of nature, because Briony wanted to create a makeup and skincare brand that is both good for you and kinder to the planet. And now Adorn is the most highly accredited zero-waste cosmetics brand globally. Briony was an early pioneer of makeup refills, and in her mission to minimize the use of precious planet resources, she made sure Adorn products are sold without outer boxes or plastics. A bold move, but a much needed change for a habitually wasteful industry. Not done yet. Briony has also recently become the owner of Be Health, an Australian range of natural collagen products formulated to promote gut health and assist with the health of your skin, bones, muscles, and joints, after finding success in using the supplements to improve her own health and well-being. A fellow podcaster chatting about business, personal growth, and living a well-intentioned life on the Briony Kennedy Lifestyle Edit. She's a woman who lives with purpose in all areas of her life, not only as an entrepreneur and waste reduction activist, but as a mother of 3 boys and an advocate for spreading kindness and raising mental health awareness. Briony, I cannot wait to hear about your journey. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Thank you. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Wow.
It really does. Like I said to you just before we hit record, I had to small up my font so that I could get most of my bio for you on the one page, because it's just fantastic.
I feel like I need a wine listening to it all. My goodness. Anyway, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, and wine is absolutely encouraged for a chat. So anytime, just a nice one to warm us up. I'd love to know, how would your 3 boys describe you?
I think they would say that I am a lot. That might not be the words that they use, but I think that I'm very strict and I like things a particular way, although they do too. So I'd like to think they think I'm fun as well, but I think hardworking, fair and kind. I would hope that they would be the words that they would describe me with.
Well, hopefully you get the opportunity to ask them after this and just see how it stacks up.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out.
So take me back a little bit. So before Adorn Cosmetics, who were you?
Look, I think I was definitely someone that was constantly searching for the answer to what my purpose was and what I was going to end up doing that was stimulating, something that I woke up to and felt high energy to get out of bed for. And so I have to say, I think I am someone that was a born entrepreneur. I had my first business when I was in primary school, and I still have the profit and loss book that I used for that business. It was called Briony's Bunny Business, and I used to breed birds, guinea pigs, fish, mice, you name it. My backyard was a mini farm called Briony's Menagerie, and I had that much going on. And so what I recognised when I was that age was that it was quite expensive buying all the food for these animals. So I used to go to the local silo where you could get big bales of hay and big, massive 5-10 kilo bags of seed. And so I realised, obviously, the supermarkets sold that for a lot more. And so when people would buy the offspring of the animals I was breeding, then I would use that as an opportunity to sell little bits of the hay, and I would break down the seed that I'd bought into smaller bags. And I was always on my bike going around the streets looking for broken cages and things like that that I could repurpose or give to people when they bought their animals. So as a young child, I think I was always someone that was able to come up with little business ideas very early. And I was always someone who was very conscious of waste and recycling. So that was another thing that really drove me, I suppose, to some of my decisions. But I think as I got older, you fall into that pattern of needing a certain amount of money to, I suppose, maintain your lifestyle. So whether it's, your car payment or whatever it is. And also, I think you start to sort of form a pathway of what you think you should be doing rather than what you could or want to be doing. So I definitely always looked for roles that were flexible in my earning capacity. And I think that's just because that's the way my mind works, is that I should be paid for my efforts, not my hours. So I really got started into the sales industry when I was working. So very corporate roles, but also in some really hardcore sales roles. You name it, I've sold it and hit feet on the pavement to do so. And so, there was some really good hard lessons learnt doing those sales roles that I had. They were definitely not easy, and I worked in the car industry for a significantly long time, and that was long hours, long days. And, at times I enjoyed the things that I did, but I never really stayed in my jobs very long because there was always something missing. Yes, it's great to be earning good money, but there was always something not quite right. And I guess when I reached probably around the age of 26, I suppose, that's when I sort of took that leap of, I've had enough of this. I'm just over it. I want to do my own thing. And just taking a step back a bit, when I was working in sales and corporate roles, and I've worked in gyms, I've worked for sanitary companies, as I said, like you name it, there's not probably an industry I haven't been in. I also on the side used to freelance makeup artistry. To this day, I still colour in. I have different Derwent collections that I love. I love colour. I'm quite eccentric with that kind of thing. Like I just love colour. I love colourful clothes, colouring in. I find it very therapeutic. So for me, doing the makeup artistry after hours not only was a great extra bit of income, but I found that quite relaxing. And so, the two areas of sales and the makeup artistry sort of led me to this defining moment where I had enough of what I was doing one particular day and found a beauty salon that was for sale. And as you do when you're 25 or 26 and you're sitting at the reception desk of the car industry you're working for, decide I'm going to buy this company and hope that my stepfather will lend me the money to buy it. So getting on the phone and being as persuasive as most people will know I am, I tend to get my way when I really want it. I started my journey with Adorn really, I think, when I made that decision to purchase this beauty salon at that point in time. And that in itself taught me a lot, not only just about business and staff and needing a shitload more money than you think you do, also learning face to face what customers really wanted when it came to their skincare and their makeup needs. So it was a really good stepping stone for what I didn't know at the time was going to be what Adorn is today.
Wow, that's just such a moment to go, do you know what? I'm going to have this business. I'm going to be a business owner right now and I am going for it. I love that energy. What I really love as well is your passion or your skill in the sales area. I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast, a lot of people who are in business for themselves find that area quite challenging. particularly when it's something that you're so passionate about. It's a little piece of you going into the ether and you want people to accept it, you want people to love it, and it feels a little awkward having to sell it. Did it feel different for you to start to sell your own work?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest hurdle people have when they think of a product or a service that they're essentially wanting to promote and be rewarded financially for is they instantly think they're selling something. And you need to think of it as it's almost a duty of care to show people or explain to people what it is you do. If you're genuinely that passionate about what you do, I think that it is a duty of care rather than selling something, to let people know what it is that you do. And I think the next thing there is that you need to not take it personally. And I think that's why ultimately people don't like to sell. It's not the selling itself, it's not the promotion of the product itself, it's the fear of rejection. And you need to understand that people are not rejecting you. They may be rejecting your offer or the price or the timing, but it's never a rejection of you. And I think once you understand that, it becomes so much easier to go, okay, I'm going to present this, and it might not be right for you now, but at some point it may be something that you remember. And so, take the ego out of it, I think, is my advice as much as you can, and treat it as a duty of care. One of the things that I used to say to my staff when I had the beauty salon, because I had this block with them providing services, and of course there's only so many services you can provide because it's hands-on. When you're selling a product, of course, then the world's your oyster because you can sell more of that. It doesn't require as much time. So they were really apprehensive about the promotion of home care products or makeup. And the way I explained it to them was, okay, well, if you were at a gym and you were paying for someone's expertise to train you, and yet you went home and ate McDonald's or didn't realise that going home and eating McDonald's was going to hinder your progress when you're paying for that time to exercise, wouldn't you be a little annoyed? I think there's a duty of care for you. Someone's come in for a facial or a wax or whatever. It's a duty of care for you to explain to them how to continue those results at home, because no results are achieved on a once-off basis. Now, that comes down to your business, how much you commit to something in your business, whether it's your social media, whether it's, the day you spend marketing, whether it's your diet, whether it's whatever it is, doesn't become successful, nor will it become anything that makes a dent in what you're trying to achieve if you're doing it once a month or once every now and then. It needs to become a habitual thing that you do every day. And when you're explaining this to your customers, that's what they want to know. They want to know that you are invested in them and explaining that, look, I can give you all the facials in the world. More than happy to take your money for facials, but you're not going to get the results if you don't do the home care. So it's all about that duty of care, taking the ego out of things and just understanding that things are not always right for people at that moment, and maybe they're never going to be right, but that's the beauty of choice, isn't it? So for me, I guess learning those things and explaining those things to my team at the time became sort of a pathway and a learning for me when I was looking at the Adorn brand. Now, don't think for a moment that the Adorn brand, the way it looks today, was my goal. I had absolutely no inclination that this was going to happen, nor was it really my aspiration to have this massive brand. It really did evolve quite naturally and organically, excuse the pun. But, for me, when I had the salon, and I know you're very much about understanding how people make the switch from working for someone for yourself. And that can be extremely daunting. So yes, it was daunting from going from an paid employment, regular, safe money to having a salon. It was extremely difficult. It was not an easy thing to do. I think it'd be great to touch on the things that you're prepared to forego when you start a business. I think that's a topic we need to discuss. But that was a very difficult, soul-destroying in some ways, but also a real sharp learning curve. Now, I could have taken that experience with the salon and just packed it all up, but me being myself, I was like, no, I do want to sell this business. I'd had enough of it after, I think, 2 or 3 years. I'd done quite a lot with it. I set up a membership program, which was the first of any beauty salon to see. So basically, like a gym, people prepaid to come to our salon. And how that worked was if they prepaid or preset what they wanted to spend, say $100 a month, they would get maybe $100 worth of services for $80. So they got 20% off for committing as a member. But what happened was most often the customers would set their dollar amount to a little bit higher than what their treatment spend was. So they'd let that extra accumulate so they could treat themselves to something else. But for me, from a business point of view, I'm always looking at how do you sell this at the end? And if the business relies solely on you, you don't have a business, you're self-employed. So it's about, okay, how can I then market this as a valuable entity? And setting up this membership was such a good thing for me because I could prove cash flow, turnover, and really quantify a value on the business. That being said, I did have enough of it at the end. There's only so much you can do, especially in that space. It is quite saturated. I feel for anybody that's in a beauty salon environment, it's hard yards. It's really hard work. I keep going, always keep going. Resilience is always one of the keys to success. But for me, I decided to sell the business. And then I found out the week before I had signed the contract with a new owner that I was pregnant. So it kind of worked out really well in that respect because I was like, whoa, this is a lot. And as it turned out, I was incredibly ill through the whole pregnancy. I had hyperemesis. I couldn't even drink water without vomiting, and it was 24/7 vomiting. Worst hangover feeling you've ever had in your life. It was like a gastro hangover. I don't know how to explain it, but it was deathly. And so that really crippled me for the whole time until my twins were born. Things sometimes happen for a reason, and luckily enough, that sort of rolled out the way it did. So Adorn really started around, I think the boys were about 6 months because clearly I had nothing better to do with twins. I decided that I needed something else. And for me, I think that I'm always driven around business. I just love it. And I love working and I love people. And so I felt that being at home all the time, especially with twins and considering the fact that I'd been housebound for the whole pregnancy, I just needed to get out. And so one of the things I remembered when I had the salon was I kept some details of a manufacturer that produced skincare and makeup locally at the time. And I don't know why I even kept it then. I was like, I'll just keep it because it might be handy. Well, it turned out to be, because in my mind, I was like, oh, now I remember I had the details from that manufacturer. But I was still a little bit apprehensive about producing my own products because I'm no scientist. I don't have a background in these things. So it was really just as a makeup artist and as a beauty salon owner and being a woman that wears makeup, I know what works and what doesn't. You know, having exposure to so many thousands of women, it was really a no-brainer from that point of view. But I thought I'd dip my toe in the water and just see if what I wanted to do would work by using another brand, like a party plan. And I think it was called Arbonne or something at the time. Really, I wanted to just get out, make a little bit of extra money and have something that was versatile that I could do in and around when my husband was home because he worked long hours. So I thought, okay, I'm going to teach women how to put makeup on because that was one of the things I recognised in the salon was that just the very basics, and we're not talking smoky eyes, we're talking what foundation do I wear? I hate wearing foundation because it makes me look older. These basic things. So I paved the footpaths and got out there and started, I guess, my own kind of party plan, essentially teaching women how to put makeup and colour match makeup from their homes. And so there was always 5 to 10 women and I would have this product, I would explain what the basics of skincare is, what and when you use things, and of course the makeup side of things. Once I realised that that was being so well received and I was getting quite busy, I then started to think, well, hang on a minute, I'm making all this money for this brand, like I could be maybe selling my own products. And that's when the idea came around that maybe it might be worth looking at a small selection of products to continue doing this. So Adorn very much started out as a party plan with me going out there doing that. It started out as just a colour cosmetics brand initially. And then I guess organically it got to the point that because I was giving people time, I was giving them, you know, something that was of value to them personally, and then backing it up with the duty of care, which is the product. So, yeah, I'm selling it, but no, I'm not really. It's a duty of care for me to show you now what you can do at home with this. That it just worked because given the time of day, someone cared enough, and then there was a product there that they could buy. Now, it becomes so busy that there was only, again, so many hours in the day that I could service these party-style get-together training sessions or whatever you want to call them. So, you know, getting phone calls for reorders, hadn't really kind of thought of that far ahead and thought I better start maybe a website or something like that. And so that's how the Adorn website and becoming online really started, was just purely because out of necessity that I needed a way of being able to give people access to the products without having to constantly access me all the time. So that sort of gives you a bit of a trail of events as to how Adorn started. And then, of course, we've continued on from there.
Just incredible. I love to hear that something has grown organically in that way. Something you said there about not considering people needing to have more product, buy more product, and having that present itself as a great problem for you to solve. I think so many of us get into the space where we need to know what the next 17 steps are going to look like with this business and be as prepared as possible for that circumstance before even taking that first step. So much of these conversations are a reminder to me, but all of us in business, that it's okay. You can take a few steps and then just figure out the rest later. You can retrospectively sort things out. If your website isn't perfect, you can figure it.
My whole Adorn journey has been figuring it out as we go. Honestly, it's like, holy shit, that didn't fucking work. We better fix it and do something else. I think you can plan until the nth degree and never get anything done. And I don't know whether it's probably my personality. I'm definitely someone who takes calculated risks. I'm not someone who sits and plans. Adorn has never had a business plan. It's never had a marketing plan. It's never had any plan. It's literally based on what I felt. And it's all about my gut feeling, experience, but also gut feeling as to what I felt was right. And luckily enough, it has been. But I think if you learn to trust yourself, but also give yourself parameters to work within, because I find, and I have mentored different small businesses along the way and people, and I think the biggest concern and stress for people is that they've not considered the parameters that they feel comfortable working within before they start. And what happens is they find themselves in a huge amount of debt, or not able to spend time with their kids, or not able to exercise, or not see their friends, and then they become stressed because all of these things are happening to them that they hadn't quantified or qualified as to the level of importance in their life. So I think that if you are looking at taking a leap into a new opportunity or working for yourself, I think you need to get very, very clear on what things you're prepared to forego, because it's absolutely not possible to have or do it all. Something will always fall to the side. Something will always fail if you expect to do everything. You've got to do a few things really, really well and accept that during this period of change that there's things that you're going to have to forego. There's an opportunity cost for every decision you make. And so for me, I got very clear on, okay, now we've put this on the website. What's going to happen? I can see this now is possibly going to grow. What am I financially prepared to commit? What's my comfort zone there? Now, this has moved along as my journey's moved, but back then I had to look at, okay, how much debt can I get into, or how much money can I borrow comfortably knowing I can pay it back? I'd like to think I'm a very honest person, and I would like to know that if I borrowed money from family or banks, that I would be paying it back. And so for me, it's like, okay, what is a comfortable figure? So I reached a figure where I thought, okay, if I had to go back to work and work for 12 months or 2 years and I had to give up half my wage to pay back, then I would be comfortable with losing that amount of money. So you could say to yourself, you're on 100 grand, 200 grand, 50 grand, whatever you're on, if you can survive on that at the moment, maybe your $100,000 is what your benchmark is for your debt. Because you know if shit fails, you can go back to work couple of years and probably pay that off and not have to go bankrupt and suck your thumb in a corner somewhere. So get very clear on what you can take on board as debt. And then, of course, where and how you're going to get that money, of course, and be careful about taking it all on at the beginning. If you're wanting to do this yourself, I mean, obviously this is a different thing. If you want to bring in investors and raise capital, that's a whole different thing. But I'm referring to you just trudging it out and doing it all yourself. The other thing you need to get clear on is, okay, what things in your personal life are you prepared to forego? So for me, it was like, okay, well, probably not going to be able to see my friends as much. Probably can't exercise every day now. It might be twice a week. I have to accept that there's going to be some hours I don't get to spend with the kids. But I had this conversation with myself, and you need to be prepared for that. And I think then you will find your journey a lot easier. So then when you've done that and you're clear and you're comfortable and you obviously you jump in. And I think the other advice I'd give you is whatever you think your business is going to cost you, double it, because there's always incidentals, there's always mistakes. And the last thing you want to do is have a really amazing idea, but you just haven't been able to facilitate it financially because you've underestimated the cost. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing things while you maintain your current role at a job, if that's a safety net for you. And then again, it's about foregoing your evenings and get things started by just dipping your toe in the water. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think you have to just leave everything and start hardcore straight from day dot. You can definitely test the waters with things. I think it's just the key is get very clear about what you're prepared to give up to get to that end goal of success, whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore with that statement. And it can be just the simplest thing that when a family member or a really close friend says to you, hey, we're going away this weekend, or, in a few weekends' time, would you like to come or come out for this dinner or do this? And, they're the kinds of conversations that you don't realize are difficult to have. And you've got to be prepared with it, because those people won't necessarily understand where you're at. They will say, what can't, if you work for yourself, can't you just maybe do a little bit upfront or put things off or reschedule meetings? And I've found that one of the most challenging things to get through as a people pleaser, a natural people pleaser. And I'm sure a lot of people relate to that too, that you just have to let so many people down to really back yourself, and got to be willing to change your lifestyle a little bit. It could mean, I think you and I might have connected over this, something I shared on LinkedIn about living in a place I don't necessarily would want to live in. Great place, but somewhere else because it's cheaper. Or you stop drinking coffee because it's unnecessary. The simplest things, you give up the gym membership. You can't necessarily have it all in the way you want to go to that next level.
No, that's it. And where I'm at today is very different to where I was 15 years ago when I started Adorn. And there are still weeks and months where I go, okay, this month or this week, what are you going to forego to get this done? And it could be because, we're launching a new website or we've got a new product and the girls need me to do 50 million videos, So I just get very clear at the beginning of any change what I'm prepared to forego that week, that day, that month, because I find, especially as a woman and maybe a mother, that you become very guilty of what you're doing and you get anxious because you're like, it's just, I've got this and I've got to do lunches and holy shit, you want me to do little, and I wanted to exercise too today and I can't have a coffee with my friends. So I am naturally one that runs on 100 cylinders. My doctor's always said, you work at 120%, everyone else probably works at 70%, like you. You're a nut. So I put a lot of expectation on myself, and the way I curb that so that I protect my mental health is, again, always constantly readdressing, okay, this week there's no exercise and I have to get cool with that. So then I've started my week not feeling like I've let myself down. I've started my week knowing that was the expectation I set for myself. And little things like that can really make a huge difference to your mental health and your soul, because you're pre-planning all of that rather than trying to do it all and then just feeling let down because you can't. So I think that's definitely key, and just constantly sort of changing the goalposts a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, couldn't agree more. I'd love to stay. There's so much I want to ask you, so I'm going to have to curb myself here. But I almost want to stay with that little space right before Adorn became a product that you could hold in your hand, that very first product, or that very first group of products. Tell me about the experience of creating them and then marketing them.
Look, I have to say that it was with, I guess, trepidation that I did that, because whilst I was really excited about the possibility and I knew that it would work, it was again that whole, I suppose now we use the word imposter syndrome. It wasn't a thing back then, but was that, who are you to start a makeup brand? You're not L'Oreal, love, just calm down.
I'm so glad you brought us back there, because yes, that I have to be an expert in something in order to make it my business. We should put that in the bin. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just love that you took us back there.
But it's so true. And you've already got that self-doubt in yourself. And then there's the dreaded revealing it to your friends and family, what your idea is. And you are met with crickets. And you just think, okay, I'm not getting the response. No one's as excited as I am. And ultimately, look, you're going to have your pessimists that just I think your success or your ability just to give something a go shines a light on their feeling of inadequacy because they don't want to do that, and that's a them problem. Then you've got your people who don't always support you because they're scared that you're going to fail and they don't want to be a part of that. So it's kind of like with good intention but not. But ultimately, when you're already having that self-doubt, it's quite difficult to ignore the negativity that you'll get, and I can promise you'll get it. And you'll get it from the people you least expected it from, and you'll get support from people you least expected it from. So I learned really early on that family and friends weren't necessarily going to support what I was doing. And it wasn't from a negative space. It was just from a, oh, shit, I can't watch this. This is going to be a freight train situation. And they were scared for me, I think. So, when you're scared, you put the blinkers on and you say nothing. So definitely no ill intent, but it was not the support I thought. So, I guess for me, I just thought all you can do is give it a go. And if it doesn't work, I'm only back to the same spot I was in before. So for me, I just think it's about giving things a crack. Just give it a go. If you think in your gut that what you're doing solves a problem or a pain point for someone or it value adds to someone's life, then I really think that you have a business to work with. Now, I think it's also about getting very clear on what your idea of success is. I meet a lot of women in particular, and I'll always get this, I'm just a mum, or I just work in reception. I'm like, no, there's no just anything. You choose to be where you are and be proud of that. Everybody's success level is different. So for you, being home with your children, cooking organic food might be success. To somebody else, it could be turning over X million dollars a year. So you don't need to compare yourself to other people's success. That's just ridiculous because your needs and wants are very different. And if we're all the same, how boring would it be? So that will be the first thing. Do your business for the right reasons. Do something that you're passionate about, because there's that old adage, you'd never work a day in your life. And I think that if you're genuinely passionate about something, you'll be more resilient and more resistant to things going wrong, and you're more likely to persist when things get really tough because you're very, very clear on why you're doing something. So for me, starting the products, yes, it was very daunting. I did feel like I had a cheat doing it. I didn't have a lot of support other than, say, my husband and a few people that were like, yeah, give it a go. But, I gave it a crack, and luckily for me, it worked and it's grown into the beast that it is today. It's definitely been one of the hardest things I've ever done, I have to say. And again, I don't think you can prepare yourself, even if you are an expert, I don't think you can prepare yourself for being in business, because you can be an expert at something. For example, you could be an expert personal trainer, all the things about fitness and health and bones and muscles, but you start taking on your own Pilates studio or whatever and throw debt and bills and managing people and customers into the mix. Totally different ballgame. And this is why experience and expertise is not necessarily something you need to worry about, because the most successful experts are not great with people and they're not good with money or whatever it is. So that's where this whole experience and expertise thing can just, like you said before, go in the bin. You need to be able to communicate very well. And I think that's real key. And that's one thing that I've always done is communicated, whether it's been something people want to hear or not. I communicate things, and that way we're all on the same page, and very clearly people that you take on board as employees or customers even, be honest, be brutally honest about what you're offering or your products or the job or the role you've got. Your communication is key. Don't assume anything, because that is where you will find your undoing. But definitely the first 10 years of Adorn were extremely hard. Yes, I had the odd win that made me keep going, thank God, because you can only be knocked down for so many times before you possibly give up. But there was a lot of crying, there was a lot of thumb sucking, there was a lot of what the hell am I doing? I was in an extreme amount of debt. Yes, it was debt that I calculated that I could afford to pay back at some point, but we're still talking a lot of money. I had 3 boys, obviously a husband. I've had my own mental health issues over the years that I've had to sort of work with, and it's not been easy. It's definitely not been easy. And I, for 10 years, didn't have a wage. So that was something I was clear on too. I got very clear on the fact that as long as the business was growing, I didn't mind if I didn't take a wage, and I was prepared to do that for as long as it took. So that's something else you need to be clear on, is how long can you do something for without having any money in return? So yes, there was money there, but it was going all back into the business to grow it. So I think if you are starting something that you're self-employed with, with. I think you want to give yourself a good few years just to really sink into it and really take that on as your persona and embody that self-employment role, like, for example, yourself with your podcast. But I think if you're taking on a business and you've got employees and things like that, and you're trying to do it without investors or capital, you really need to give things a good 5 to 10 years. And you need to ask yourself, are you prepared to put up with that amount of time? Are you prepared to commit to that amount of time before you see the fruits of your really seriously hard work?
You're exactly right. There is some proper hard labor in there. Tell me about an experience where you were so challenged that you almost gave up.
Oh, we could do a whole podcast on just that alone. There's been multiple times where I've had issues with new web developers that have promised the world and then delivered a website that's not even functioning. I remember one particular occasion, because it was just me, myself, and one other person running the business. We had a new software that was integrated, spent an arm and a leg on that, and had a week of orders. All the orders were going out and being dispatched. And then, of course, finally got time to reconcile all of our cash and things like that. Realised that none of those products were paid for. The payment gateway wasn't working, but it was telling us that the products had been paid for. So we were getting emails to say that there would be a successful order come through, but there was actually no money that had gone through. Now, that's earth-shattering for, a fairly new business, and losing all of that stock. Luckily, most people, when we rang, paid. But little things like that, and well, that's not a big thing, really make you question, Jesus, like, what else could possibly go wrong? Like, there's that. I think that the defining moment for me, though, was probably around year 9, where I was up to pussy's bow financially. Like, my husband and I had a couple of properties. We'd sold it all, put it into the business. We were now renting at this point. Any money that we had was gone. We had our parents paying for our food. It was getting low and dire and extremely stressful. The hardest thing for me was, though, that the business was always growing. But of course, when I started 15 years ago, there was, or even now, it's very hard to get funding through banks. So what I did was had a heap of credit cards. Now, I'm not by any stretch recommending this, but I worked off credit cards because they were very easy to get. Again, I made sure I was able to pay them back, but I still had a huge amount of debt at this point with a business that was growing, but one that I felt like, shit, we are on the bones of our ass. We've got parents paying for our food, we've got $500,000 worth of debt of whatever. So holy shit, what are we going to do? And this is where imposter syndrome comes into it again too. So when I started Adorn, I was a firm believer that the products, from the sustainability, the ethos, and the quality, stood on their own 2 feet, and that they would just sell themselves. And they were, because they're amazing products. It's a testament for being around so long. And I felt that I didn't want to put my face to the name. And you've got to remember 15 years ago too, you didn't have the opportunities you've got now by way of social media and exposure to people. If you couldn't get into a Vogue magazine or something, you like, forget it. Advertising, you're talking 10, 20, 30 grand just to get a page in something. So you almost had to be wealthy or raise capital to even exist, especially in this space. So I had to get real bloody creative. And so for me, I guess I was at loggerheads with how I felt and perceived the beauty industry needed to look, and that was that Vogue Chanel looking, with what I could afford. But I also didn't want to put myself to the brand, because I felt like, I don't want the brand to be about me. And so that's how I sort of run things for 9 years, was it was product focused. So there was one particular moment where I had a pretty hard chat with my husband about, shit, what are we going to do? Like, this is getting hard. And so he had decided at that point that he would maybe try and get some work, because he wasn't working at the time. He was at home helping me out, because we had a little boy. Our youngest boy was only probably a couple of years old at the time. And I was thinking, all right, well, I'll go pack shelves of a night time. I was walking dogs, I was dog sitting, you name it. I was doing everything that you could possibly do to bring in money. And then my husband said, Briony, I know you don't want to do this, and I've been telling you this for years, but he said, why don't you people like you, they like listening to you, they buy from you. Why can't you do something with the products, promote them yourself? And so I thought to myself, what have I got to lose? Like, literally everything right now. So the only thing I'm not doing is promoting the products myself. And so Facebook was kind of at the point where it was starting to do video and business, but it was not doing ads or anything at this point. So we're talking, 5-6 years ago now. I thought, okay, I'm going to just do a video on how to put loose mineral foundation on, because it's the most wow factor when you do it on camera. And again, I wasn't convinced. I thought, look, I'm about to, this whole thing's going to die, but look, let's give it a crack. What can we lose? So I got my phone, and to this very day, I still film everything on my phone. But I had my phone sitting on this second story in this bathroom of this rental that we had. And the bathroom was like this disgusting, like 60s. Everything was yellow. Oh, my God. The acoustics, of course, wasn't the best. So I sort of had the window open a bit to kind of make the barrier of noise work well. And the lighting was shocking. I was so uncomfortable with staring at myself and talking, because I think mentally when you're watching yourself speak, there's a bit of a delay in your brain. Anyone that's filmed will know what I'm talking about. So the whole thing was just really uncomfortable. And to me, I look back at that and I think that was the worst. But I did it. I gave it to the girls, and I did a couple more, and we decided to use those on Facebook, and we started to use them on some Facebook ads. And within a week of me putting a story, essentially putting a face to the brand, making it more relatable, the business turned around in a week. And so I remember very, very clearly sitting at home, because I've got the access to the back end of our website, checking the sales. Like, when you're on the bones of your ass, you're checking stuff every day. Like, how am I going to play staff tomorrow? How am I going to do this? How am I going to eat? So I was checking the sales, and I thought, because I'd had so many experiences with the website having issues, I thought, oh my God, there's all these sales. I bet you the website's duplicated these bloody orders. So I'm thinking I'm going to go into a shit show the next day of trying to figure out how many orders have been accidentally duplicated for people and all of this. And when I walked in, I said to the girls, are they orders or is the site stuffed up again? And they're like, no, Briony, they're real orders. Like, it was just unbelievable, the turnaround. And it's such a testament. And I would argue with anyone that hasn't given it a go, that's, apprehensive and just thinks it wouldn't work. It's bullshit. If you put a relatable face, it doesn't have to be yours, but a relatable face, someone that's engaging, and a story and a purpose behind what you're doing or what the product stands for, people instantly are drawn to that. And they'll see through whether it's not genuine or, there's not good intentions. I think people will see through that. So you need to be very much of a genuine person, an honest person. But look, honestly, I can't stress enough how important it is you get very clear on what you're doing so you can communicate that to your customers. And you need to communicate it or find someone that's engaging enough to do that for you, because I went from a brand that was $500,000 worth of money in debt, or probably even more. I probably blocked it out. I don't want to think about it. Paid that all my debt off. I paid off in 1 year of doing those 3 shit videos. And then, we've turned into a extremely successful multi-million-dollar brand. And so all testament to that. And so, yes, a lot of my time now is spent doing tutorials, and I've got a private group that I spend a lot of time in. But that time is worth so much than sitting on the couch sucking my thumb wondering about how I'm going to do things. So that was definitely a learning curve for me. And again, it comes back to that imposter syndrome. You just got to give things a go.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. I love that story so much. And what I love about that, I'm reading between the lines a little bit, because it's quite different to the approach of whatever I create, I want to give it the value so that I can move on from it and I can make it saleable to somebody else. And it sort of sounds like you've had to come to a resolution on that to be, well, it's a balance, isn't it? So it's about having to put a little bit of personal touch to something to make it profitable, and balancing that with, okay, what's the future plan? What's happening with this company? Is this something I want to let go of, or is this something that's going to remain in the family? That sort of thing. Was that an experience that you went through?
It's probably something that I think about more now as I'm getting older. 15 years in is a long time to sort of commit to anything. I think for as long as you enjoy something and love what you do, then keep forging that path. But I also feel that opting out of something or moving it on to another successor while you still are passionate about it is also probably key. I think letting go of something when you've had enough of it may not be the best time. I think if your goal is to sell it while you still have that passion and energy, because that will shine through to the next person. And plus they'll sense if you've had enough and be able to play ball a bit more financially with what they spend on your business. But, I'm at a point where I'm still really enjoying what I'm doing. And I do feel that there's still such a long way for us to go with Adorn that, I'd love to be a part of that for a little while longer. But I'm also conscious of the fact that my family may not want to continue what I'm doing, especially because I've had 3 boys. It may well be that, I need to pass it on to somebody else eventually. But don't let that be why you don't put your face to a brand, because yes, I have thought, crikey, like if the brand's all about Briony, then is this saleable to someone else? Well, of course it is, because there's products there that are selling 24/7 on a website. But it's just about introducing, now that we've got the trust a few years ago, obviously now introducing other faces, because not everybody looks like me either. Like different colour skin, different age groups and all of that. So, yes, we have really looked at bringing in other faces and other personalities into the brand. So anyone that follows us will see that happens, so that then it's not so heavily reliant on me. But from a business owner's perspective, I think you need to be prepared that if you are in the business or face of, that there may be a capacity that the new owner wants you to stay on for. So I think that if you are starting to feel burnt out, you might want to consider selling your business, because the person that buys your business probably will want you there for another year. And, have you got the ability to do that? So I think that's really important, and why I said sell it while you're still passionate, because, otherwise you're just going to be totally drained by the time they want you to stay on. And if you are a founder-led brand like mine is, then, of course it makes sense. They need you to stick around because they wouldn't want to shock people that have fallen in love with you with something else. It probably would eventually be that it would be sold to someone else. I'm not sure of any family members at this point in time that would want to take that on. But I have, as you mentioned, taken on another brand recently. My passion is building businesses. I love it. I've always, as I said, been a bit of an entrepreneur. It's just in my blood. I could come up with a business like that. I love it. I love the drive of making money, not because of what money stands for, but just because I can see it figuratively to what it's equating to. But I just hope to get more into that maybe mentoring space and helping other businesses learn from, of course, what I have, and continue to enjoy building the Adorn brand, building the new Be Health brand, because I think that it's just something that gets me going and gets me up every day. And not just me, but I have to say, half of the business is my family, actually. So I've got cousins, I've got all my sisters and brother working there. I've got an auntie there. It's a family affair.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. You have to make sure that that's not a topic of conversation at the Christmas lunch, I guess.
Yeah, it is a whole lot of fun. I mean, it could have been a whole lot disastrous, but taking on, family members that deserve the roles they've got. I mean, there's, you don't just take people on because they're family. They need to be able to do what you want them to do. But look, it has been a success for us because there's the trust, there's communication, and there's respect ultimately. And I think that, you'll always have a successful business if you look after your employees first. They're the first customers that you should be looking after, because they're going to portray that happiness to your customers rather than, that vengeance or that feeling of being taken granted or whatever. So I think it's very important that you make sure you've got a really good team that respects you and everybody's supportive of each other.
I have 2 more questions for you because I could quite literally talk to you all day, but I'm cognizant of stealing too much of your time. I'm interested, you have so much experience in the e-commerce space, and I would arguably say that today, if you're stepping into an e-commerce business, there's a lot of services, platforms, experts that guide you along the journey. Certainly not easy, but perhaps a little easier. Would you say, with your depth of experience, that it's getting a little harder to get noticed in the e-commerce space, particularly around things like, I'm going to use the dirty word, people who do a little bit of greenwashing? and employ a lot of e-commerce strategies that get kind of rolled out in that space. What's your opinion on that? And have you found it harder to get noticed amongst the noise?
Look, I think like anything, yes, there's competition. First of all, I think let's take it to should you sell something or do something, because there's so much available already. Like, will I even be able to get any sales? That's the first point. And then, yeah, how do you get noticed? One of the things that I always say to people when they're like, oh, but I want to do this, but I don't really know because there's already other people doing it. Well, have you recently been to the supermarket and noticed, I mean, it's been around for years, how many varieties of milk there are? Whether it's almond, oat, soy, cows, oat milk's oat milk, cow's milk's cow's milk, but there's still a ton of brands there and they all sell. So it all comes down to choice, and people love having choice. Now, some people will buy things based on price. Some people buy things based on it being more expensive because they feel like it will be better. Whatever their reasons are, I don't think that competition by way of the amount of things should stop you, because you can always make things a little bit better. Again, don't reinvent the wheel, but smooth the wheel out a little bit. And I think in today's age more than ever, being that there are so many people online now, the biggest beef that we have is we can't contact a bloody person. Oh! So I think if you are a huge conglomerate and you don't have a phone number even on your website, you probably don't care. You're probably turning over that much stock. You're possibly price driven and it's a turnover business. So get very clear, is your business a turnover business? You know, got high turnover, maybe low margins, but you're a volume-based business is probably the way to describe it. You probably don't want to be bogged down with customers. Maybe you keep that all online. But I think if you're starting out with something like what I did with Adorn and continue to see the importance and the validity of is your customer service. And I mean being able to see someone or speak to someone. So we make sure that we stand out by the touch points that we offer, not just through the range, but how you can contact us. So whether or not you are Google searching, and if you're only on Google and you've only got a website, well, yes, it's probably going to be harder for someone to find you unless you've got a really good budget and really good keywords and all of that stuff. But if you have some other touch points that you're on Facebook, you've got a private group, you're on LinkedIn, like you name it, I've made sure I've been on a lot of different platforms. Pick 3 or 4 because you can't do them all and you can't do them all well. Facebook has always been awesome for us and it still to this day is. We do a little bit on Instagram. We're putting our toe in the water for TikTok. I do believe TikTok's going to take over Instagram, especially now as the older ladies like myself are getting on there. It's not so much dancing around your G-string anymore. It is quite informative. So I think that whilst it is possibly harder to be noticed, there is still more opportunity now than ever before, the internet and e-commerce. You had to go down a street to find that shop, or the yellow pages. You're probably even too young to remember that. But you had to go through the yellow pages to find something.
Thank you for the compliment, but no, I do remember.
Okay, cool. Do they even have them anymore? I don't know. But if you weren't in the yellow pages, who were you? That was the thing. You know, you had a shop and then you could only service your local area, when now you've got so much opportunity. And yes, it's fairly saturated in most industries, but you still have a better opportunity now than those stores did back then, because you don't have to sell locally. You can sell globally from your local spot. So I think it's really about having a very clear message on your site, making sure that you've got a really good team behind you to help with SEO. And there's a lot of bloody SEO jockeys out there. Oh, don't even get me started on the amount of money you can waste on this. It's not as easy to say, have good keywords, get a good SEO strategist. It's not as easy as that, just as much as it's not as easy as saying get a good web developer. It's like saying get a good doctor. You're going to have to go through all the riffraff to find the ones that actually give a shit and actually are going to deliver. Because when you're paying for something you don't understand, and let's face it, a lot of people don't understand tech, you are so easily hoodwinked. And often what will happen is you pay for something and then people will turn around and you'll be like, well, I'm not getting the results. And they'll say, oh, but that's because you didn't give us this or your image wasn't clear enough. It's very easy for them to pass the buck when ultimately they've just not done the right thing. So referrals are a big thing for me. Make sure that you get your details from someone who has success with these people, because you can spend an absolute arm and a leg and you can put yourself under before you've even started because you've gone and done too much. I think that if you are on a budget start local. It gives you an opportunity to iron out any mistakes or iron out any customer feedback that you weren't prepared for. And then, it becomes a smaller financial mistake than a bigger one. And I think that once you start ironing those things out, then you can start looking at attacking things globally or, interstate or what have you. But in synopsis to that is, if you've got the right people behind you, it's not hard to be noticed. If you've got the wrong people around you, yes, it will be.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. You've given so much knowledge and insights in, not just the makeup industry, not just the beauty product industry, but, here with me today and on your podcast and talking about business and giving genuine advice and being open. It's exactly why this podcast exists. We want to encourage more people to get out there and create the thing that they love, to have the kind of life that they want to have the kind of career that they want to have, even if it means taking a whole bunch of risks. So you've given so much in sharing your story today and talking about some of your risks. So as you continue on this journey and continue to grow, how can the listener and I support you?
Ooh, I'm always a big fan of just supporting local, and we're a local brand. So I'd love people to support the Adorn brand, at least have a little looky there, because, supporting a local made business is not only good for my family, since half of them are there, but it also supports local industry. It helps bring back manufacturing. I think COVID's probably taught us, that horrible word COVID has really taught us about bringing back things to local and how we need to start relying on ourselves a bit more. So I'm quite passionate about supporting local, full stop. It just happens that we are a local brand. So I'd love for you to support our brand so we can continue to grow, not just from a financial perspective, but from an environmental perspective, because Adorn, as you mentioned, is so passionate about sustainability and not recycling. It's about refilling, reusing, and also minimising your impact at the very beginning. So using a lot less to create things. So I just love seeing people buy Adorn. Yes, the bonus is I make money out of it, but if I'm really honest, I get a real kick just because I know that them buying an Adorn product has helped the environment just that little bit, and it all incrementally adds up to collectively one big positive result. So definitely supporting the Adorn brand. You'll be happy to know that there's samples available if you are wanting to put your toe in the water and test out our products. There's reviews there. You can check them out as well. There's also, of course, the new Be Health brand that I'm starting to promote a little bit more, which is really about your inner health and your gut health. So Dawn's sort of your outside and Be Health is your inside. But look, if you're just really happy to follow me along, you can definitely check me out on Instagram. I've got quite a few people on there that like just checking out the day in the life of, and that's the Briony Kennedy Instagram. And there's also, of course, the podcast that you mentioned at the beginning of the day as well.
Oh, fantastic. I'm going to have the links to all of those things in the show notes. So listener, you can go click, add, follow, do all of the things and check it all out. Briony, it's been just such a pleasure to spend time with you today and to hear your story. It's been wonderful having you on the show.
Oh, look, absolutely my pleasure, Kim. I hope it's helped even just one person. And yes, I think there's quite a few more segments we could touch on, that's for sure.
Isn't there just? I know. I think we need a part 2 or a season 2 or something.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm your girl. There you go. Happy to help.
Thanks, Briony. One quick thing. If you're hearing this, you've listened all the way through. Hopefully that means you really like this podcast because it's pretty generous to give up 40 odd minutes of your time for it. If that is the case, please leave the show a star rating and a review. It helps me reach so many more people who might also listen all the way through and get some benefit and some support out of it. Not to mention, it puts a real spring in my step to read them. Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the stories of starting over with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review, and of course, join the community on Instagram and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid. See you there.